What's going on, guys? Welcome into another baseball breakdown for Jagerbombs. We have Thursday night. Had a dual slate today, so um, just kind of finishing up the early slate. Had a good run at it at one of the qualifiers that I played in this morning, but not gonna. I don't think I'm gonna get there. One of the satellites had a Yankees full stack with, and didn't have Stanton, of course, with a mini Washington, and then somehow got away with playing some not so good pitchers, at least at the bottom, with Patrick Corbin, who I don't know that I've rostered in quite a while, but here we are. Hold on 1 second. I'm going to touch on one thing. All right. So again, what we're going to do today, just similar to the other baseball shows that we've done, is we'll go through the matchups quickly. We'll go through starting pitching and thoughts high level on that. We're getting some lineups rolling in, so we might touch on some of those that are feeding in, and then we'll go over some bats. And then we're going to go over to SaberSim, who I run some things through on the baseball side of things, especially, and see what's popping out at us today. So before we get into that, be sure to check us out if you haven't already. Get access to our cheat sheets like you see here for all sports that we have. We have tons going on right now, 11 total. Of course, not all are in season, but we've got NFL and college football coming back. We've got PGA finishing up the season. NASCAR, all three series every week, full weekend this weekend. NHL, NBA, both of those will be back before you know it. EPL is back as of last weekend. So we got a lot going on, a lot of content going up every single day from myself and then our other team members as well. So be sure to check us out. The link is in the description of the video below. We also have a partnership with Ship It Nation. They have given us a 15% off discount code Jaeger15. You can use the links in the description as well. That'll take you directly to that. You can choose a monthly subscription with them, get a free 7-day free trial to try them out. They have a lot of complimentary products, to go with what we have here. Take the research on our side, apply it to theirs. They have an optimizer as well, or saying as well. I mean, kind of with SaberSim that I mentioned before that I use quite a bit. But you don't have to use their optimizer if you don't want. They have a lot of written content, some cores, rankings, projections, things like that as well. So be sure to check them out. We'll go ahead and get into pitching here. Interesting slate from the pitching side. We've got two guys that can have pretty big upside in Paul Skeens and Dylan Cease. Skeens goes up against Cincinnati. Cease is going up against the Mets. You wouldn't think of that necessarily as great matchups, but Cease probably has the tougher of the two, as Skeens gets Cincinnati, who is kind of middle of the pack, and they've been striking out a ton over the last couple of weeks. So just gives him some upside. If you look at even more upside, if you look at some of his matchups that he's had recently, he's not blew the doors off coming out of the All-Star break like he was before. Seattle, I don't love the idea, or I don't like seeing that he wasn't really good there. But he had the Dodgers, Arizona, Houston was in this stretch as well. All three of those are pesky and really good offenses. So I'm willing to give him a pass. He gets a strikeout happy team in Cincinnati, and I think he bounces back here. Hard to get away from him. Cease would be the pivot option for me unless you can play both of them. I think you can do so. If you find some cheap value stacks, maybe we'll find some along the way today. Moving down the board, you've got Corbin Burns going up against Houston. Don't love that matchup a whole lot. They're not striking out a ton. They're not hitting very well right now, Houston, but not striking out a whole lot. Schwellenbach for Atlanta gets a red-hot Philly team who's kind of surging over the last couple of weeks, and even over the last month, they've been really good. So I don't like that. For him, Lodolo would be my top mid-range option right now. Cincinnati, maybe you just double stack the pitching in that game. 7.5 total in that one by the sports books, which would be the lowest on the slate. He's 8K, so he ranks third in our pitching model. Pittsburgh has been not very good. They've been kind of middle of the pack, over the last month, and they're striking out a ton. Probably the best strikeout matchup on the slate. Maybe we'll take a look here at the lineup for Pittsburgh today. So Connor Falefa, Reynolds, Bart, you can kind of see the K percentages that are fairly high here, with the exception of Connor Falefa, some of these guys, but a few over 30%, a lot of them high 20s. So I think you can definitely go to Lodolo. I think he's a very solid option. Yarbrough is going to be the lone reliever here for Toronto, it looks. So I don't, have a lot of interest in him, especially at 7,700. But he does get LA, who's not been very good all season. So you could look at that. Arrighetti gets Baltimore. Don't like picking on them. One that I kind of want to dig into a little more is this Atlanta team, who actually rates out pretty well over the last month and for a couple weeks in terms of power and WRC plus against lefties. Still striking out a ton. I think they're striking out the most in the league over the last month. If we take a look at their lineup, I know it's in as of now. Merrifield's not striking out. Urshela's not really either, but a lot of those guys in the high 20s. So there are some Ks there. But Sanchez is not a world beater by any means. So maybe you could look at them. I don't know, what we're looking at in terms of ownership. He just is coming off of a full game, complete game against Washington, where he only gave up one run, which was a solo home run. 31 DK points, by far his best outing. Well, no, not by far. I think that's his second complete game this year. So he does have upside, especially if he's getting the strikeouts, because he's not a very high K pitcher. He does have a few really good outings with strikeouts, but just look at his last three, 4.42 strikeouts over those last three outings. So that one's kind of, I think you honestly, as of right now, I'm kind of in the middle. I mean, I could make a case for Atlanta bats, and I could make a case for Sanchez for a cheap tag going against them. Severino and Canning. Canning probably shouldn't even come out of my mouth unless I'm talking about bats. And Severino gets a very pesky San Diego team who can be frustrating to stack at times, but they are not going to strike out. So don't love the cheap range here. Maybe a Sanchez, and probably sticking to one of the two top studs and Lodolo if that's kind of my preferred route right now. Moving over into the bats, Toronto has the highest implied total right now on the slate. For us, Toronto going up against Canning. Kind of self-explanatory with how bad he's been this year, and Toronto's red hot over the last week. So got to have interest in them. Baltimore gets Arrighetti, like I talked about, that I didn't like the matchup for him on the pitching side, but You've got to have some interest in Baltimore. They've been really good all year long. Let's see here. Yeah, they rate out pretty good against split against righties, just really against everybody for Baltimore this year. Let's see. Yeah, they are. Yeah, they are rating out. They've cooled off a little bit, it looks like, of course, recently, but it's kind of hard to be as hot as they were all year. The Angels against this Toronto, Yarborough is interesting. I don't think I expected that. Atlanta's right there. Everybody here after the top two are kind of bunched together, 4 to 4.2. I could make a case for a lot of those teams. So looks, I would expect the chalk to be what we just talked about at the top with Toronto and Baltimore, more so Toronto against Canning. So let's see what Sabre's spitting out. Kind of get some thoughts on where can we leverage this slate at. So I'll share my screen over to that. All right. So we're not going to make any adjustments right now. We're just going to run teams. In previous videos, I've talked about some of the small things that I'll do. I will get rid of every stack except, the 5-3, 5-2, and 4-4. So we'll go ahead and run this. See what pops out for us here. Yeah, it looks like Blue Jays, Orioles are probably going to be the top two owned. Braves are pretty low. Yeah. Like I said, I could make a case for Braves on both sides. So interesting to see. Kind of want to see what we're projecting ownership for some of these both sides of that game, because the Braves are going to be pretty low. Let's just see real quick before I get into it. Sanchez is coming out at around 11, so they're pretty low too. So again, I think that could be a side if you're playing single entry, maybe you pick a side or maybe you stay away. But if you're multi-entering, I could see getting exposure to both sides of that game. So let's see where the top 20 teams come out and what we popped out. So in terms of pitching, Griffin Canning came out at 5K as 70%. Oh, okay. So we're going to leverage the slate in that way, go up against the most owned by a large margin by directly pitching against them. Interesting. Don't know if I can do that. Let's dig into Canning a little more. Yeah, I mean, he had a solid outing against the Mets. He put up 25 DK, 8 Ks in 5 innings, gave up 1 earned. Had a decent outing against Seattle. If he gives you 5 or 6 innings and 20 DK points, and he has done that a few times this year, I could see it. I mean, Atlanta just hung 7 on him 5 days ago. Washington hung 4 on him, and then before that was the Mets outing where he put up 25. The tough part for me there is how hot Toronto is, especially over the last week, and they're not a big K team, so that part makes it a little tough for me. Skeens and Cease at the top. you're getting more Cease, I'm going to guess because of ownership, than Skeens. No, they're about similar. Actually, Skeens is projecting for a little lower on, so I'm interested to see that Cease is more. Maybe the 500 is really worth something. Get a little bit of Sanchez, a little bit of Lodolo. As I go in and make adjustments, you're probably going to see me bump Canning down and just see if I continue to get him. And you're going to see me bump up Lodolo and probably bump Skeens slightly higher than Cease. I think that's probably the product of that. If we look at stacks, the 5-mans, we are getting a lot of Philadelphia here right now. So that's an interesting one, kind of middle of the board, going up against Schwellenbach. So that's, he's been all right, but he's not been. He has had a few good outings after kind of a weird start to the year for him as he came up against LA and Colorado. I know the Colorado was in Coors and he was solid 18, but against LA he gave up 3. But Miami and New York there to start right around the end of July and start of August, he put up 40 and 20 K. He's been solid, but Philadelphia, they have a good offense. The question is, have they cooled down a little bit? Yes, but I think they can continue in a kind of middle tier of ownership on this slate. I don't think a ton of people will go to him. I think that's part of what's playing into this. LA, Atlanta, and New York are getting some ownership also in the 5-mans. If you go down to the minis, Philadelphia, Atlanta, and LA, yet again, we're not getting hardly any Toronto. Let me see if I expand this out to 150 if we start getting any of them. We get a ton of Philly still, the Mets, LA, and Atlanta. So that's interesting to me. When you look at LA going up against the Yarborough long reliever spot. You got the Mets going up against Cease. I don't know why we're getting 5-mans of that. I don't know that I'll be going there. Cease, he has a big upside, but he's not been great over the last 3 outings, all on the road against Colorado, Miami, and Pittsburgh. He gave up 3 and then 2, and he had a very short 1-inning outing. I can't remember what that was against Pittsburgh. But he's not been a world beater over the last couple starts. One was in Coors. So maybe you pick on him, but I think it's more of a thing like Skeens, where I don't really want to do that, even though he's been mediocre over the last couple starts. Atlanta, Houston, we don't get any Toronto in the top 150. No Toronto in the top in mini stacks. We get Toronto 2.4 lineups out of the top 150, and it's all 2-mans when we do get them. So, man, LA is popping against that Toronto, against the Yarborough spot, Atlanta, Philly. The Philly one, I think that's what sticks out to me here. That I could move them up the list from where I was at. Let's kind of move around the pitching and see if that does anything to the bats. Like I said, what I kind of want to do is move up Skeens just slightly above Cease, and I want to bump Lodolo into that 17 range, and I'm going to bump Canning down to about 9. We'll see where that gets us. We'll rerun. Don't know that I want to mess with any run totals. They have Toronto projected as the most at 4.8, Baltimore. So they just don't have them separated enough, I think, is where that's coming in. And when you add in ownership, they're really getting hit. So let's rerun that. And then we'll probably get on out of here for Thursday. All right. So we did get a huge bump up in Lodolo when I bumped him about a 1.5 projection. Skeens, we still didn't get much of. We still got more Cease. Pricing must be pushing that up quite a bit. We got a little more actually Sanchez. If you look at stacks, we still got a lot of Philly, some Cincinnati actually, still some LA. So we're still not getting any Toronto. We actually don't get any in the 20. When you bump to 150, we get just a little bit still here. LA, still Philly, LA. I mean, are the two that we're getting a lot of. So I think that, to me is going to be, I'll switch back over really quick. I think the interesting thing to me is taking the spot on, or the stance on Toronto. Do we get any? I didn't really look if we got any Canning in that run. In 150, we only got 11 when I bumped him down. But, I think that is something, that I'm taking away from this, is that I don't really want to go full on Toronto on a slate where they're going to be the most popular by quite a bit. Want to add in Philadelphia as a GPP stack going up against Schwellenbach. I think that's interesting. We're getting some more lineups in here, so I'll have these updated on the sheet. There's some name match things that I need to get taken care of. So we'll get that added, and I'll have all my full highlights for both pitching and hitting on the slate here in just a little bit. Early lock today, a couple hours till lock, so be sure to get your lineups in before that. Good luck to everybody, and we'll see you next time.